Welcome to the Bret Boone podcast. I'm Bret Boone, and today on the program, I'm joined by a man that umpired in the big leagues for at least 29 years. He worked three perfect games, five World Series. He retired after the 2022 season, and I'm excited. I get a chance to catch up with Teddy today. We've been together a long time. 93, the PCL to current. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome Ted Barrett. Teddy, thanks for coming on the program.
Brad, it's good to see you. Yeah, we do go back a long way. I think back to the instructional league days at Tempe Diablo.
Yeah, Tempe when the Mariners were at Tempe.
Yes.
That's a long time ago. I tell kids today, I said, "Yeah, this is my first spring training." So that's the Angel spring training set. I said it wasn't at one time. It was the
No,
Mariners' old one.
yes, it was always about 20 degrees hotter there than everywhere else, too.
Teddy, in our clubhouse, the players' clubhouse, you guys always have a reputation, the umpires, with the players. And it could be, personalities as men, balls and strikes. Sometimes you're considered a pitcher's umpire or a hitter's umpire, but we all have reputations. What was my reputation in the umpire room?
Oh, man, I would say good guy, played hard, played the game the right way. Would complain sometimes, but usually you complained when you had a beef. Um, yeah, and it's funny, too. You were one of those guys that some guys loved you. Some guys weren't so crazy about you, but you had an excellent reputation overall.
And it's funny. I asked that because, yeah, I know, things are. My life was weird because when I came to the big leagues, man, everybody was out to get. I felt like I was always that kid that the other guys on the other team always loved to hate, and I never really gave a crap. Now, once you get to the big leagues like me, I like to really dislike my opponents on the other side. And as you stay in this game long enough, we'd be playing. Let me pick a team, Chicago White Sox, and I'd pick a guy. I say I can't stand that guy. I don't like the way he walks, the way he talks. And sure enough, down the road, I'd be at an off-season event, a function, and I'd come away from it and I'd say, "Damn it, I like that guy." And I love to hate him from afar. That's kind of was like me when I first came to the big leagues. I had this reputation of being this and that, and as time went on, you get to know each other. You get to know the umpire and all the crews. The crews get to know you the longer you spend in the game, and you see what kind of guys they really are on both sides. I thought that was an interesting question though coming in. Um, okay, we're going to tackle it right away. The big deal now is, of course, it's Angel Hernandez. Uh, he's getting a lot of fire from everybody, and I look at it. I try to be as fair as I can about the situation. I think the umpires today have an impossible job. The job's hard enough to begin with, but ever since this stupid square came into the picture, and everybody can be a big league umpire now because it's simple. And of course, if that ball doesn't hit, is a millimeter off and it doesn't hit the line, of course, that guy is the worst umpire in the world. And how could he possibly? Whereas in my day, Teddy, if I questioned a pitch, I'd go I'd go back to the locker room. I'd look at it from different angles and I'd just eyeball it. And sometimes I'd say he definitely missed that. I was right. Sometimes I'd say, that's too close for me to be taken in that situation. And I was honest about it, but it was an eyeball effect. That's a straight. It wasn't black and white where if it's touching that line, I don't even think you guys use the line to train, but it's like they should put for entertainment value only. Anyway, your whole take on that was too much for me opening up this question, but your take on Angel Hernandez current state.
Yeah, well, I'll get to that, but first I wanted to address what you said. We've always said that they should put for entertainment purposes only, because the line that you see on TV is not accurate. It's not what we're graded on. It's not what even the what comes out on the internet as far as what our accuracy was, and so it's a separate thing. If you remember Pat Hoberg a few years ago, so proud of him in the World Series. He scored a 100 on the according to uh, the information they put out on the internet, but there were 7 pitches that didn't match up in the telecast box. So I mean, was he a 100 on his grading system, or was he a 100 on what the TV broadcast was? Yeah, we really don't pay attention to that. And I tell players that's not exactly accurate. So yeah, when you're going back to the dugout and looking at it or looking at the iPad, you have to bear that in mind. Also, when you came up, Brett, it was the umpire's goal was to be consistent. I might go a couple inches off the plate and be a pitcher's umpire, but my goal was to be as consistent as possible. If that was a strike in the first inning, it's going to be a strike in the last inning, and to every player. Now the goal has changed from consistency to accuracy. You want to be completely accurate with the Hawkeye system and the different tracking systems that you have. So Angel is an old school guy. I went to umpire school in 1989. He was years before me, 81, I think. And so as he came up, things were different. And he was different. He came up in the National League, and, that was a little bit these guys took no guff. I laugh at the players now, Brett, because they turn around and shake their head. I'm like, that guy would have been in big trouble 30 years ago, and now he's allowed to do that. It's a kinder, gentler world. But Angel was confrontational early on, but in the last 10 years, man, he's done his best to try to change with the game and be more approachable and talk. And he's a wonderful guy. You saw I put it out on a Facebook post. I said what a great guy he was, and then the replies I got was, well, that's fine. He's a great guy. He's still a terrible umpire. I think he gets piled on a lot. I think every little mistake he makes gets magnified. He's had a few mistakes that he's made this year that, he wish he could take back, I'm sure. But now we're in a situation where no umpire is going to be perfect. And so everything he does, they were screaming about the 3 strikes that he called on a hitter the other day. I think it was a Rangers hitter, the Rangers Astros game. And yeah, they weren't strikes. He missed the pitches, but he missed 8 pitches during the game. It happened to be 3 in a row. Now 8 pitches are, you'd rather have a better game. But I guess my point is, I think it's a situation where the people are just waiting for him to make a mistake, then they jump on it and post it. When we were playing, things weren't posted like that. Social media is a whole different animal. Anyway, yeah, I gave you a long answer there. But.
No, I agree with you. Because I'm conflicted with it because I know how tough it is. I had Tim Cheatham on. He told me, Booney, the umpires are as good as they've ever been in the history of baseball as far
Absolutely.
as X's and O's. He said,
yeah.
and I kind of looked at him like, yeah, that kind of makes sense. And that box, it all goes back to the box again because the public has no clue that you're not graded on that box.
Yeah.
I get on Aaron all the time. I said, Aaron, quit looking at that stupid box. And if we can eyeball this stuff. It's like it drives me crazy to consistently hear about it. Now, that being said, and I'm going to be as fair as I can on this.
Yeah.
As a player, I was around for Angel. I got along great with Angel. Just like we have reputations, the umpires have reputations. Some umpires, in my eyes, are superstars. Some are all-stars. Some are good players, and some are the 25th man on the roster. Just like we're ranked. Angel, in my eyes, was always that 25th man on the roster, and in a lot of guys' eyes, still a big leaguer. Everybody can't be the greatest. But that's how he was always ranked. So, yeah, he was never one of the better umpires in the player's eyes ever. I never met a player that said Angel's one of the better guys out there. No, he wasn't, but it was what he was. It was still a big league caliber. I think now, though, it's so easy to everything to just go against Angel. And I try to tell fans, listen, it is impossible now to be a major league umpire. They're scrutinized so bad. And you can't. Like you told me, we're not graded on that box, but everybody thinks you are. I said, that box is for entertainment purposes. I find myself, Teddy, sometimes sitting there, and if I'm getting lazy, I'll look at the box and go, how could he call that? Oh, wait a minute. Let me get back to the basics. And I don't know. I don't know. I hate that box, but it is what it is. I want you to take me behind the scenes in the umpire's room. You're a crew chief. Uh, Rough night. Let's say you had a rough night. You know you did. I know what I have a rough. Well, everybody's going to know if I have a rough night at the plate. You had a rough night for your standards. Like, man, I could have been better. I've had been better, been worse. You got to shake it off like everybody. We all have great nights and bad nights. Tell me how you handled that after the game, or being a crew chief if one of your guys had a really rough night.
Yeah. So for me, I like to talk it out. You come off the field, and some guys like to talk about it right away. Probably just like as players. Other guys, they want to take a little step back, get something to eat, get a good night's sleep. We'll talk about it tomorrow. But for me personally, if it was me that I had a bad game or I felt like I didn't do the best job I could that night, I would sit down and I want to talk to my crew about it. Because it's funny with umpiring, you're never as bad as you thought you were, and you're never as good as you thought you were. You walk off the field, you go, man, I was terrible. And then you go back through the game, and you're like, I really wasn't that bad. And also, you're walking off the field sometimes going, man, I was awesome. I was spot on. And then you go back through and you look at it, and go, you know what? Yeah, I really wasn't. There was a few mistakes there. So I think talking it out with the crew. Um, Also, it's as a crew chief, if the effort was there, then I've got no problem. We can figure out how to fix some things. But if the effort's not there, then we're going to have a problem. And for me personally, I never wanted to walk off the field and say, I didn't give my best. But if I'm having a problem, it could be something where, and this is where some of the tracking system feedback we get is good for training, because if I'm consistently missing that low outside pitch at the knees, maybe it's somewhere where I'm setting up. Maybe it's something I'm doing wrong. Maybe we're in relationship to the catcher, and am I too close? Am I too far back? So we're going to try to figure it out. Just like you're going to go into the cage and say, what the heck am I doing wrong here? How do we fix this? That's the same thing we're going to try to do as umpires. And then on the basis, am I too close to plays? What's my angle like? Why did I miss this play? Let's figure it out. Because one thing I want to stress is when an umpire misses a play, man, nobody feels worse about it than he does. He feels terrible. I mean, the batter's mad, right? The runner's mad if he gets called out and he was safe, but the umpire feels terrible. And so that's a feeling we don't want to have. And then when replay came in, it was great that it could fix our mistakes. But also, it's the worst feeling in the world to stand out there in front of 50,000 people in a TV audience and have someone say, you were wrong.
Yeah.
We don't want to feel that. So we'd rather stand there and come back and say, yeah, you were right. But the great thing is about replay is that you don't have the Denkinger play. You don't have the Jimmy Joyce play, I think, I know you'd agree is one of the all-time great guys.
Yeah, he
And
is.
then his missed call cost Galarraga a perfect game. It was just a terrible situation. And, we all saw how Jimmy wore that. And that's what most umpires feel like when that happens.
It is, and most umpires are good guys. There's always going to be personalities that clash between players and umpires. I look at it, I'm not on the ground floor now and not out there on the field, but it seems to me the game's changed a little bit. In our day when we first came up, 90s, early 2000s, it was a very personable thing. I mean, you come out, Teddy Barrett come out, he's at second base tonight. I'm playing second base. We'll have a full on conversation during the
Yeah.
game,
Yeah.
and we were very respectful. I always tried to be respectful to the umpires. If I didn't like a call, I tried to let it be known that that's got to get better. We might have agreed, disagreed, uh, but I always tried to have a respect because I knew how hard it is. And when you step away from it, there is human error. You can't be perfect every time. And if he misses a pitch, he misses a pitch. And if I miss a pitch, I miss, because sometimes I'll tell you, as players, if my mechanics aren't right and my left side is leaking a little bit, uh, I could take a pitch and it could seem like it's a foot farther outside than it
Mm.
really is. I go back to the tape. I argued the call, and it's right on the corner. And I'm like, man, something's flawed in my setup. If my eyes told me that was a ball. Now, when I'm locked in, and I know when I'm locked in, I know if it's a ball. But sometimes when you're struggling, man, it looks like it's so far away, and it happens to be a strike. Tell me, you talk about the machine you guys train on and you're graded on. When did that come in to play? When you first came up, was it the same, or has things changed over the years?
Yeah, no, it started in around I think 2002, I believe, when the Quest Tech system first came in.
Right.
And this was, the cameras were in the dugout. You remember Kurt Schilling got mad at one point and smashed it up. But we would actually get a disc after the game the next day usually, and you put it in the computer and watch it. It's funny how things have evolved now. The systems are better, they're more accurate, and they're still not completely accurate. It's funny. I was talking to a guy. He was telling me how we can blow up an asteroid, and we have to, the asteroid's over here, and we have to shoot the missile over here for the curvature of the Earth and everything, and we can hit it. We still can't get completely locked in on what the true strike zone is. That's another thing. The public thinks this thing is completely accurate. It's not yet. It's hard to get the height of a hitter in real time. But right, technology is always getting better, and eventually it will get perfect or close to it. But it's still not there yet. It's still a work in progress. I went to a AAA game the other day, and the ABS was calling the pitches, and it did a good job. They've got it down to where there's not much delay in the call. The zone looks pretty good, but there's still kind of some bloopers, and pitches don't track, so it's not ready for prime time, but it'll get there. And I think the ZE system that the umpires get and are graded on, and they look at the next day, it's different from the numbers that are put out by the media. So some of these third-party grading systems that you see that come out and say this is what the umpire graded at, that's not truly what the league grades them at. So if you're a major league umpire, the only thing you're concerned about is the grading system you get from MLB with that feedback. And you're not so concerned about the box on the TV, and you're not concerned about these third-party websites that put scores out. So you talk about being almost an impossible job. You want to go out and be perfect, which you're never going to be. I never was. But then also you want to score well from what you're evaluated on, which is different from what the public is seeing. So it's a no-win situation.
Right. You've got to have the thickest skin, like walking around and hey, you stink and you had a horrible game. And you're like, you have no clue. I'm not graded on what you're seeing on TV. But I need to wear it. So I got to go back to work.
Yeah.
It seemed like it was simpler when we first came up, because people ask me all the time, well, what's it like being? I said, well, here's the deal. And here's what I found that the best umpires in the world do. There's never a perfect strike zone. As a hitter, we don't train on a strike zone. We or at least when I was playing, there was no defined strike zone that we had in our locker room. It was basically, we all know what it is. Okay, some are bigger, some are smaller. But I said the best umpires, they establish their zone early in the game. So maybe some umpires are high ball ump. They're going to call that high strike, but they're not going to call the low strike. They're going to call the strike maybe on the outside corner, but they're going to give you the inside corner. So we kind of know. All I ask is, I still realize there's a human being back there. And it's like, establish your strike zone just so I know. And now the rest of the game, okay, I know I'm fully aware that with two strikes, Teddy likes to call that pitch a strike. So I've got to be conscious of that. And I can't be angry if he calls it. I already know it's a strike. So that's the way we operated back in the day. And nobody was perfect. We'd argue, we'd make up. Sometimes the hitter's right, sometimes the pitcher's right, sometimes the umpire's right, and sometimes we're all wrong. But it was the way it was. And you always, at the end of the day, respected the fact that it is a human being back there. That you're not going to be perfect, just like we're not going to be perfect in the field. And we moved on. And there was a mutual respect. How is that in your final days? You retired after the 2022 season. Have the players changed on how you guys interact?
Yeah, and let me bring up this point. You remember when you came up and when I came up, we were just American League and just National League.
Right.
So, and there was less teams before expansion, right? So there was like 14 American League teams. And so you had 8 crews. So you had 8 crews that you saw them all the time. You might have Seattle against Anaheim in Seattle, and then the next week you're down in Anaheim playing them, and it's the same crew. They followed you, right? So
Right.
there was less guys, and you got to know each and every guy. There wasn't ever a major league umpire that walked on the field that you went, "Oh, who's he? I never saw him before." You at least saw him in spring training, and some guys you saw, uh, you know, 8, 9, 10 times during a season. Now that we're American League and National League, there's 76 major league umpires. Now we've expanded and with replay, and now you might see a guy once a year, twice a year. So there's not that relationship anymore, unless you knew the guy from the minor leagues or spring training. There's guys running around, and as I got 2022, I had so many kids of former players, which was kind of cool. But um, that's when I knew I was getting old. But there wasn't that relationship with them. There wasn't history. There wasn't past. There wasn't. So it was still a feeling out process of getting to know guys. But also, you brought up a point about the way they train. Their eyes are so good. They've got so many things at their disposal that they know the zone. So it used to be like, if I called a strike on you, you're like, "Teddy, that's too far," and I'm like, "Bret, that's my strike
That's my
zone. That's where
zone. Right. Now I know your zone. Okay. I'm going to hold you to that.
right." But then now the hitters are like, "No, that's outside. This is no longer. I don't have the liberty to give them some leeway on the outside."
Right.
They're like, "This is a strike. This is a ball." You would never say. You'd say, "Ted, isn't that out?" Now they're just like, "That's out." I mean, you would have never just came out and said that. You would have,
Right.
unless you got really frustrated. But you also talked about, now that you're outside of it, you can see a little more. And now that I am not on the field, I can see the perspective now of the players, because, man, guys are just grinding so hard. It's like every day. I felt like we had a lot more fun when we first came up. Laughing, joking. It's a blowout game. Hey, swing the bat. Let's get out of here. I remember, Mike Hargrove was managing Cleveland once, and they were getting blown out. And he's like, "Hey, open up the zone on my guys too. Let's get out of here." And now it's 10-0, and they're grinding out their at bat 3-2. They want to walk because it's numbers and it's money, and I get it. But I just feel like there's so much pressure on everybody on the field. And there always has been, but it seems like there was a little bit less. And it seems like guys were looser and we were having fun, especially in spring training. I mean, we were out there, just getting in shape. Now they're showing up and grinding, trying to make the club. So
It does seem, I'm still, it makes me feel good. And we ran into each other a couple years ago. I forget the event we were at, but it was good to see you. And I'm like, all right, I'm not that old. And I still see some guys that were there when I was there. So it makes me feel good. Fewer and fewer as time goes on. But
yeah,
it was a different time. I mean, and it's not like we were going to dinner after the game, but we'd have full on conversations. We'd be talking about stuff, other than the game of baseball. And I just look at it today. It looks like it's almost robotic from both the player standpoint and the umpire standpoint. And it's, I don't know. I don't think, I can't see how that would be good for the game, but it's just the way the game is now, and they know no different. It's not like the guys are worse guys than we were. It's just the way it is now is just completely different. It seems to me, and I had Joe West on a while ago. Joe's got that reputation, and a lot of guys, oh, I can't stand Joe West. I'll tell you, I got to know Joe, and I liked Joe. I really did. We had a relationship, and it was funny. I'd come to the plate. I'd call him a fat ass. He'd tell me that I haven't grown over the offseason. I'm still short. And that's our way of saying, hey, how you doing? And we had that relationship, and there was a mutual respect. Um, Joe's outer persona is, kind of standoffish, and I'm the boss. But that was kind of a shtick that Joe had. He liked being that tough guy, and I saw right through it. And I said, Joe, you're just a bleepity bleep bleep like the rest of us. And he kind of knew I knew that. So I don't know. I think the persona sometimes of people it's not the way they really are. We all have shticks. We all have something we carry. We all know what we're known for. But at the end of the day, I don't know. I had a lot of fun with umpires, and to be honest, 90% of the guys I actually really liked. It different. Some guys I'd rather not have behind the plate. Some guys I'd rather have behind the plate. But as far as guys to guys, everybody's a pretty good dude.
Yeah, and I love talking to players. And you're right. Usually we're not talking about baseball. We're talking about something else. I'm out there. I'm talking boxing. I remember conversations with you. I was having some troubles with my stomach, and you're like, man, go here, go Trader Joe's, get this, get this. I was like,
Yeah.
you were like my doctor. And the next time I saw you, how's it going? Oh man, way better. Thank you. Got me some natural stuff going and
Yeah.
getting things straightened out. So man, but yeah, guys talking about relationships, their kids. How's your kids doing? How's your wife doing? Like you said, we run each other at the ballpark. There's guys I go back to rookie ball with, and Tim Salmon and Jim Edmonds, guys like that coming through, and I'll still run into them, and it's like, man, we were together 40 years ago. That's crazy.
What are you seeing behind the plate that I don't see? And from a hitter's perspective, and for me sitting on my couch.
For you sitting on your couch, it's with the major leagues, the late break, and I don't think television picks that up as well. And I'll tell guys, high school, college kids, the amount of break that a pitcher, a major league pitcher, can cause to happen, even in late, meaning the closer it gets to the plate, and then it's breaking off sharply. Those are things, and then everybody's throwing. It used to be you'd have one or two guys coming out of the bullpen throwing 98. Now everybody's throwing 98, with sync, and it's. I don't know how anybody hits a major league pitcher. It's really hard. It's hard enough to call, but to hit it just seems almost impossible. So, I think everybody's throwing harder now, but like real estate is location. Greg Maddux throwing 88 and just dotting it, got people out. These guys were throwing 102. I think they don't know where it's going as well. But it's awful tough to catch up to a 102 mile an hour fastball. So I think what people behind the plate see that others don't is that velocity and the break of the ball and the late break, which is really impressive.
Does it make your job a lot easier if you have a Maddox type that kind of if you could kind of feel the catcher how he's setting up? If he's setting up away with a Maddox, he's not going to miss up and in. It's going to be away, and when he misses, he used to miss. I talk about him all the time. He's the best I've ever seen, Teddy. And in my day, there were a lot of great pitchers, and we're talking Clemens and Pedro Martinez and Smoltz and Glavine and Randy Johnson. There were some great ones out there, but for my money, day in and day out, consistency across the board. There was nobody like Greg, because when he had a bad day, his misses were inches.
Yeah. And that's the thing that impressed me about him was, he'd throw a pitch a little off the corner. If you call it a strike, he'd go a little farther. You called that a strike, he'd go a little farther. When you called it a ball, he knew, okay, that's where the edge is. And then he just went and lived on it. So you had to you established yourself early. And then once you did, he knew exactly where to throw the ball. He's probably the only pitcher I'd seen that consistently could say, I want to throw the ball there, and then do it time after time after time. And so, I don't know today if he'd been as successful because, well, he would have been successful, but, taking each individual umpire, he'd keep a notebook on who called what, and then he threw to that zone. He'd have figured out a way to do it today, but I think, again, now you've got you got to remain consistent with him. The pitch you called on the edge in the second inning, it's got to be the pitch you call on the edge in the ninth inning. And so it was fun to umpire games because he worked quickly, before speed up rules. He used to say, I want to go out and win. I don't care how long it takes to win, but if I'm going to lose, I want to lose quickly. And so he would get on the mound and throw the ball. And that kept you in a rhythm. That kept you, the infielders, right? You guys were in the rhythm of working quick, and the catcher's back there and he's loving it, and then the umpire's loving it. So it was fun to work Greg Maddux.
Okay, all right. So I'm gonna nowadays. Okay, there's something you're graded by that system, and you got to have thick skin, and you can't worry about what Twitter says or what anybody else says. You know how you're graded. Let's say a guy's having a rough month. He has a rough year. Are there any consequences for umpires nowadays? Is there anything where if you do X, Y, and Z, this happens?
Well, first of all, if you're not doing very well, you're not going to get the postseason. Which some people say, well, so what? It's like that's the big thing, right? That's why you're out there. You want to be a postseason umpire. You want a World Series, and if you're not doing well, you're not going to get that. So that's one thing. But also, if you're consistently not scoring or you're having a bad month, there's different levels. First, your crew chief's going to sit down with you after your first bad game, and let's try to figure out what we're doing wrong and how do we do better. And then you're going to have supervisors come in, which are former umpires, and they're going to come in and sit down and say, all right, let's figure out why we're having problems here. Let's figure out, is it our stance? Is it our setup? Is it, how are our feet? All the little things, just like hitters, we have all those things too, to try to lock in. Are we having trouble with, concentration? Is there something going on? Did you get a concussion and now you're having trouble locking in? There's these things that we can look at. So one thing that a lot of people will say, hey, this umpire is not very good. Players don't perform. They get cut, sent down. Umpires don't perform. They should get cut and sent down. You're talking about guys that spend 10 to 12 years in the minor leagues, and now they're in the big leagues in 5-10 years. You're not going to send that guy down to AAA. And who's to say the guy in AAA is going to come up and do a better job with him? I'd rather take that guy and let's try to figure out what's going wrong and let's get him right. And because we've got so much invested in him. Now, I will say it's a young man's game. It's hard to be as we get older and, slow down. The young guys are phenomenal. Tim Cheetah's right. The umpiring is better than ever and will continue to get better. These young guys are impressive that have come up through the minor leagues. And, I think, you talk about the ABS, and baseball is going to put that in if they need to, if they feel like that's what the way they want to go. But these young umpires are phenomenal. So there is some accountability. It's not like someone can just continue to go and be bad and nobody says anything about it. And, but there's also there's more to umpiring than just behind the plate, although that's probably the biggest thing. You still, you've got the bases, you handle situations and everything else that comes into it.
You mentioned the minor leagues. That's an interesting thing for me. I was in the Carolina League. That was my A ball. I knew what it took for me to get to the big leagues. For an umpire, explain to the people listening to the Bret Boone podcast, how did you get to the big leagues from A ball?
Yeah, like I said earlier, there's now 76 major league umpires, and there's about 200 minor league umpires. So as an A-ball umpire, you're a long way away. You can't skip a level either, like the way you did, where you jumped up. You go from A-ball, you've got low A, then you can go to high A, then you go to double A. You just got to get that experience. And think about this, in A-ball, you're working two-man, right? There's just two umpires, not four like the big league. So you're working a plate every other day, which is good because you're getting those reps. Then on the bases, you're trying to cover a whole lot as the only base umpire. And so you also have situations where you're seeing plays. It's a great training ground. But then what you've got to do is just work hard and keep improving. keep improving, and then maybe getting a shot to go up to the next level, double A. Now you're working 3-man. That's a little bit better, but you're still getting reputations. You work a repetition. You're working the plate every third night. And then if you progress well enough that and the supervisors see you and you grade well, you go up to triple A. And now you're getting looked at by major league supervisors. And then, hopefully you're going to get the fall league, get out and get some advanced training where every day they're working with you. Then spring training, you get to work some major league spring training, see if you can do it on a bigger stage. And then you'll get called up maybe for an injury or a vacation, and you make your major league debut, and let's see how you handle that. And then you get into the rotation of working vacations and injuries as a call-up umpire, and you'll end up working most of the season in the big leagues, not even AAA. So you don't even have a job yet, but you're working in the big leagues. And so guys are putting in time. Chris Guccione and Rob Drake worked over 1,000 major league games before they got a full-time major league spot, which is crazy. So when you see a guy that's a full-time major league umpire, he's been through it. He's been vetted. He didn't just come out and try out and throw a uniform on. Man, he's been grinding at it for years.
I look at the game today. What do you like about today's game from an umpire's perspective? And what do you wish? Man, I wish they wouldn't have changed that. For me, I'm going to let you answer that. I'm going to tell you what I miss.
Man, I've always been a purist, but I'll say this: whenever there's a change, I was always like, oh man, I wish they wouldn't do that. But it always ends up being pretty good for the game. The big thing was the speed up rules last year. I'm like, what is this? And of course, that was the first year I was out. And I'm like, man, I'm going to sit back and watch this. I don't know how this is going to go. It went really, really well.
It did.
Last night, did they play a game in like a 140 something? I mean, man, I want to make a comeback. But I think it's great. It eliminates the dead time. And, there's always going to be drawbacks. Is it causing injuries, things like that? But it's, the game is it's almost gone back to, I watched the old films from, like when your dad played. I mean, there wasn't as much dead time. They were in there getting after it. But I do like the speed up rules. I do like the pace. It's quicker. When replay came in, I was like, man, I don't know about this. And it caused some problems that we didn't see, right? The guys coming off the bag by a little bit. Tags when you play, just get the ball down on the ground, get it in front of the guy.
Ball.
Yeah, and ball beats you, you're out.
Right.
So it changed some things, but again, and it also eliminates a whole lot of senseless arguing. Like, you think you were safe, I think you were out. All right, let's go to New York, and they'll break it down with, all the angles they have, and then the play, it's right. We get it right. So it eliminates some of that. Everything that baseball's implemented, I think it's been good for the game. So even as the grumpy old guy, I would be like, man, don't change nothing. It's a great game. It's perfect. Well, it's got to evolve, and I think they've done a good job with it.
I agree with you on those points. The one thing I'd like to, and now if I put on my fan or my player's hat, yeah, I have one opinion. If I'm the owner of a team and I have a lot of my own money invested, I understand that side of it too. But back in the day, it seemed like players took care of business. We took care of business on the field. It was over. I remember getting drilled. Maybe my guy had drilled somebody else, and it wasn't personal. It was, in my butt or leg, and I understood, and we all understood. It seems like nowadays, maybe they take it out of the hands of the players too quickly. And it's like, oh, I want those guys to get that handle because that's got to be right in the player's mind. But maybe I'm dating myself and think players don't think like we used to think, because it was always an eye for an eye, and we'll get you. Now, it might not be now. It might not be the time or the place, but we'll get you. It may be in a split squad game next spring training, but we will get you. Yeah. With a different crew and maybe guys that have no idea what's going on internally. We will get. Nowadays, it's tough. It seems like, man, there's a warning right now, and if anything happens, you're suspended, and we can't get we can't get this guy suspended. So I don't know. I kind of wish that we were allowed to play a little bit more, but at the same time, I understand the safety. That owner that's paying that guy 30 million doesn't want to see him wear one in the back. So I get it.
Yeah, it was a few years ago when Frank Robinson actually, which is funny because when Frank was a manager, man, he was terrible with umpires, right? But
Yeah.
he was public enemy against them. But he came and worked for the league office and basically was one of our bosses. He was a great guy, I thought. But then he went back to managing, and he was like, "What happened, Frank? You were a great guy, but loved the guy." But the point he made was, yes, and nobody knew the game better than Frank. He said, yes, the players used to police it, but he felt like the players had lost their way, where guys started, instead of drilling you in the butt, they were going for the head. And, baseball became concerned that, hey, we're going to get someone, seriously injured out here. So we need to start cracking down. Yeah. And I believe they did take that away from the players to police themselves. But if you look at it from their viewpoint, they were like, yeah, we've got to get out in front of this before someone gets seriously hurt. And, again, if I'm the player's dad, I'm like, yeah, that's good. you kind of got out on top of that. But it also, from an umpire standpoint, it was easier to take care of things because, well, we didn't have to take care of it. You would. This
Right.
guy slides in with his spikes high. It's like, okay. And then he gets drilled. You're kind of like, well, yeah, he deserved that.
Right.
But then if does he deserve to get drilled in the head? No.
No.
We're not trying to put him out of the game. We're just, you guys were just trying to teach him a lesson. So you might wear one in the side, and it's going to hurt real bad, but you'll be okay. You'll get some ice, and
Right.
you'll play the next day. Yeah.
When you're umpiring, what's it take? What's it take to get run? What is there anything magical for Ted that all right, he does this, he's out? Or is it something is a let's see how this conversation go or this argument goes.
Yeah, there's ones, and usually with
You
me,
thrown Aaron out? You thrown Aaron out?
I don't think I have.
Okay.
Aaron's always been respectful.
Everybody throws Aaron out.
I know.
All
I
right,
think
go
I'm
ahead.
the only one that hasn't. But yeah, Aaron's been. I was always pretty respectful to me, which I'm thankful for. But the magic thing is, first of all, whenever there's an argument, I'm always going to try to first de-escalate it, keep the guy in the game. Right? The fans came to see them play, didn't come to see me throw them out. But the same token, I'm not going to allow him to do some things and stay in the game. So first thing, the automatically you or your horse crap, the PG version. It's if you're going to direct it personally at me, you're done. We can't do that. But if you're like, hey, that was a horse crap call. All right, now I'll give you a little bit of leeway. We'll talk about it. If you're going to get up in my face and start yelling and screaming, you're not going to get as much leeway as if you're going to speak calmly to me. So there's a reaction. This is an emotional game. The guys are wound tight. We talked about that. So if a guy reacts, I'm going to give him a little bit of leeway because I get it. He's emotional, but then he's got to bring it down. And if he doesn't, and he continues, he's going to go. A lot of times managers, they're yelling from the dugout. They're trying to keep their player in the game, get the heat off the player, take it on them. So I think actually sometimes a manager that gets ejected is doing a good job by keeping his player in the game. But yeah, and I was a guy, I didn't have a ton of ejections because I felt like, I had a relationship with guys and I can de-escalate it. But there's other times where guys are just going to go and, tossing equipment around. I don't like that. Guys banging their helmet on the ground, whipping their bat on the ground when they're mad about a call. That's got some guys ejected, or at least an equipment violation first. So yeah, again, and I think most umpires are like me. You got the initial call, the initial reaction is one thing, but then if you're going to carry it on and keep it going, yeah, you're not going to stay in the game. And I always tell people, major league players know what they can and can't say. So and then they'll act shocked, like, I can't believe you ejected me. You know dang well why he ejected you, and you can't do that. So yeah, it's
there is too, and as a play, it's a dance. It's a
uh-huh.
dance, and it's almost like uh, it's almost like seventh grade. and you have a teacher that likes you, and she's not having a good day, and you're being the class clown, and all of a sudden she gives you that look like, okay, it's not cute anymore. You know when to back off.
Yeah.
Uh, I had a reputation, and people would probably think as a player I got thrown out a lot.
Yeah.
We lost you,
Sorry.
Teddy. All right,
Yeah,
well,
I'm back. Sorry.
yeah.
How many times did you get ejected? Do you
Well,
remember?
how many times do you think? Okay, and let's take the minor leagues into consideration. So I started in A ball, Double A, I was in Jacksonville. Then I went to Calgary, the PCL, and then the big leagues. So total 17 years. How many times do you think I got ejected?
Counting the minor leagues?
Counting the minor leagues. You can count college if you want.
I'm going to go 10.
1.
Come on.
In about
College, minor leagues, big leagues.
2, I was probably a 12, 13-year big league veteran. I got thrown out. Kansas City, I forgot who the umpire was. I never paid the fine, and Frank Robinson was the captain. Frank Robinson's daughter used to babysit for me during winter ball in Puerto Rico when him and my dad played together. So I know Frank from way back. So I wrote Frank a letter. I'm saying this is an invalid toss out. It's an illegal ejection, and I'm not paying it. I've never been ejected in a professional game before, and I'm not paying this. I never paid the fine. Here's what happened. Kansas City, there's nasty shadows. Gosh, and I can't think of who the umpire was. We can't see. I can't see, and I know if I can't see, he can't see.
Yeah.
This first ball, it bounces. Calls it a strike. I said, listen, I know it's tough back here. I said, but the ball bounced. Boone, I had it. I'm having the toughest time as you are. Anyway, it builds up. He calls another one low. It's not even close, strike 2. I'm getting pissed. And now we're having words under my breath. I worked the count back to 3-2. And he throws me a breaking ball, bounces. I swing and miss it. I miss it by a half a foot. Strike 3. But I'm still seething over these 2 called strikes. He knows it. I know it. But I throw my bat. I just swung and missed. So the assumption is, hey, I'm mad at myself, but he knows that I'm pissed at the 2 previous calls. I throw my helmet, I throw my bat. He ejects me. I said, you can't eject me for that. I swung and missed. I was angry at myself. He goes, you know, and I know that you were pissed because of the 2 previous calls. I said, absolutely, but you can't assume that. This is a court of law. He threw me out. I remember I was beside myself because I had never got thrown out of a game before. Everybody thinks I got thrown out all the time. Everybody thinks Aaron Boone, Bob Boone, they're the good guys. Brett's kind of that man. He's got a chip on his shoulder. He's that fiery guy. Who's the good guy now? Aaron and my dad have get thrown out of at least 15, 20 games apiece. Me, 1. 1 time, because I knew how to work it. I could push it right up to the limit, and then if I look at Teddy Barrett in the eyes and I see that look like, all right, he's got no more rep, boom, I pull back.
Yeah,
because I know.
Guys used to say, I know when your face gets red, Ted, we know that's when to back off. So,
right.
But that's shocking. Not shocking.
I thought that'd be a good question for
that
you.
Is an excellent
I didn't
question.
think you'd get it right.
And I'm going to find out who the umpire is. I could look that up, and I'm going to text you.
Paul
Nart, Paul Emmel.
I forget.
Paul Schreiber.
No, it wasn't. No, not Paul Schreiber. I think it's Paul Emmel.
Okay.
It was in I want to say 02-ish, 03-ish. It's the Seattle Mariners versus the Kansas City Royals in Kansas City.
Okay, I'll find that.
And it was my first at-bat ejection. Because I remember it was 03. It was 03 because who's the skipper for the Giants right now? It was the Padres skipper
Bob Melvin.
Bob Melvin was my skipper. He was a rookie skipper in Seattle. So it's 2003 is the year.
Okay, I'll find it.
And it was Paul. I remember Paul. And to this day, it was like, that's an illegal ejection, Paul.
And due to your relationship with Frank, you didn't even get fined.
Okay, I'm going to put you on the spot.
Okay.
Everybody's calling for it. They've been ever since Joe retired. Angel's going to be the whooping boy. Should he be? Should Angel stay on?
Yeah, I mean, that's a whole lot of years in Major League Baseball. A whole lot of service he's had. There's no reason to fire him. Yeah, and if you look at it, you look at his entire body of work throughout his career, and then throughout this season. At the end of the day, he'll stack up, with other umpires that are his age and his experience. He's not just a guy that stands out at being terrible. Although the media will continue to exploit that. And then when he leaves, when he retires, whenever that is, someone else will be the whipping boy. They'll pick someone else up and start going after them. So yeah, no, the people that are in uproar that want him fired, there's no reason to do that. And I'll tell you this again. I know this doesn't make you a great umpire, but he's a great guy. And what I think is, I talk to players that played 10, 15 years ago. People change, people evolve, people get better. That's Angel. He is just a wonderful guy. And so to see him get attacked like that, and I read a lot where people think he's arrogant. Even some of the posts yesterday were about how arrogant he is and how he won't, how he refuses to discuss with people, and all that couldn't be further from the truth. I know that's the perception. He called timeout the other day when the Mets player said, "Do I have a timeout?" And Angel, what he thought he heard was timeout.
Right.
But that's not a mistake now that he can correct, because the clock's already been stopped. The guy's already has his timeout. It's hard for him to go, "Hey, I was wrong. I heard him say timeout. I thought that's what he called. Get back in here and let's go." And you still have a timeout. It's like, someone brought up the other day about the Phil Luckett coin toss with the Steelers overtime game, and saying, Angel and Phil Luckett were I know not a lot of people know what I'm talking about, but the overtime game with the coin toss, and I think it was Jerome Bettis or one of the Steelers started to say heads, but then said tails. They're comparing that to
head tails. Yeah.
Yeah. And, that was the rule. That was what the referee was instructed to do. So when he started to say heads, that's the one he had to go with. When Angel heard the player say, "Do I have a timeout?"
And I think it was the Mets, right? Second baseman.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Nice kid. And you're sorry that happened, but Angel has to now go with.
You got to make a call you think is made, right?
Yeah. So it wasn't him being arrogant and like, "I don't care." It was, "Yeah, I made a mistake, but there's no way to fix this. Sorry, man. That's on me, but take your time out now, get in and hit."
Right. And I think, I think it's always going to be that way. Like, we're all human beings. We're all different. We all walk and talk a different way. When I was playing, and I opened the show up with this, there's guys on the other team I couldn't stand. I got to know them. Some of my best friends in the world are guys I couldn't stand to start with. Sometimes it's a perception. It's some people look at Angel and they see a look on his face and assume, "Oh, that's an arrogant man." They have no clue. Twitter is the fake world. It's the fake world of everybody knows everything and nobody knows anything. Nobody's on the inside. Nobody's on the ground floor. So yeah, that has nothing to do with anything. Now, I will stand by my opinion that he was never one of the better umpires. For me, he was always in the lower ranks. He was always that 25th guy on the roster. Lucky to have a uni, in my opinion. That doesn't mean Bret Boone's right. That just means in my personal rankings, that's where I always had him. Didn't have anything against the guy personally. When he was behind the plate, I didn't go into that game going, "Oh, Angel's going to screw something up." He did sometimes, but I never worried about it. He was still a big league umpire. Hey, just call the game fair. Show me that you have integrity. That's what I cared about as a player. Show me you have integrity, because we're all going to make mistakes. When I feel like you're compromising integrity, that's when I had a real problem. But as long as you kept your integrity in check, it's like, What can I do? He's a human being. Am I never making any mistakes? We all make mistakes. But as long as I know you're grinding your butt off to do the best job you can, call balls and strikes, as a player, yeah, I might get miffed. You might, we might have some words, but at the end of the day, I can respect that.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's the thing. I think uh, I really want fans to know is how much the umpires care, how much they care about their performance, how much they care about giving their best effort. And again, they're trying their hardest to try to go out there and be perfect, and it's impossible.
It's impossible. Yeah, with the
Yeah,
technology today, the way it is, you're right. It's impossible. And
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 they're
I hope they get the word out. I want everybody to know. I really do think, and all kidding aside, I really think that there should be a an asterisk up there that says, "Listen, this box we're showing you, it's just kind of an outline. We think this is kind of the strike zone. This isn't what the umpires are graded on. This is not how they train. This is not what the hitters are trained on." So I think they should do that, and just that would take the temperature down a little bit. Like, hey, this is a rough outline where we think balls and strikes are, but if it's barely off, let's not throw a hissy fit and say how bad you are. You guys know the real, and I understand also too why they don't want to make your data public, because the guys that are ranking lower, well, now they're going to get beat up publicly when maybe their lower ranking still a high ranking. It's just not as high as the high. You know what I'm saying? It's
yeah,
like you're facing Acuna last year when he's hitting 330. If you're hitting 250 and playing good defense, you're still a good big league player. But if you're going to be compared against Acuna, the MVP, that's not a fair ranking.
right. And
Does
we
that make
always said,
sense?
yeah, absolutely, you're
Yeah.
absolutely right. And we used to say in AAA, if there's 76 major league umpires, I'll take being the 76th. If you want to
Right.
rank me last, it's better than being the best umpire in the minor leagues, right? So,
Yep.
I think even like I said, it's a great staff. The guys are better than ever, and the guys that they've got coming up in AAA, they're fantastic. And so, I think the future of umpiring is in great hands. And I also think, like Tim said earlier, and like I said earlier, the guys are better than ever. In looking, I'm going now. I went to the Cal League yesterday. I was out in San Bernardino, some of our old stomping grounds. The umpires are doing a great job out there. It's they're getting better training than we had, and the staff's going to be even better than we were.
Well, Teddy, I appreciate you taking the time, man. It was fun to catch up with you. Teddy Barrett, tied all time, most postseason, 33, I think. He did 5 World Series, a couple All-Star games. He did some 3 baseball classics. And one of the good guys that I always had a lot of respect for, and enjoyed our conversations throughout the years. Enjoy retirement, and thanks for coming on the Boone Podcast. For all of those you watching the Boone Podcast, now watching on YouTube, I appreciate you tuning in. For those of you listening to the podcast on the Odyssey app or wherever you get your podcast, appreciate you tuning into that as well. And until next time, keep it here.